Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my September reading wrap-up. Honestly, at the end of this month, I sat here and before I even looked at any of my stats, I was like, wow, this was probably a pretty bad reading month. I did the tandem read for Throne of Glass at the beginning of the month, and it took me 2 weeks to read both of these books. But then when I thought about it, I was like, well, they're both like almost 700 pages each. So 700 pages week 1, 700 pages week 2 actually isn't too bad. So I did end up reading 5 books this month, which is almost my average, so I'm not too upset about that. And then I did get over my goal of my page count, which was 2,568 pages read, which is actually one of my better page counts for the year. The moods for the month were mostly tense and emotional with a little bit of adventurous, mysterious, and dark thrown in there. Mostly read fantasy, which makes sense because of the tandem read, as well as dystopian, young adult, thriller, horror, and a graphic novel. My average star rating for the month was a 4-star, which is actually really great considering I had a 2-star this month, which was another one of my worst books. I only had 2 stars so far this year, so to still have an average rating of 4 is not too bad. All right, now that we've gone over the stats, let's go over the 5 books that I read this month, starting with, of course, the tandem read from Throne of Glass. I read Empire of Storms as well as Tower of Dawn at the same time by Sarah J. Maas. Now, if you were reading these in order, you would start with Empire of Storms and then read Tower of Dawn. But it is highly recommended to do the tandem read, and at first I was very intimidated and nervous about it, but after doing so, I 110% agree. If you plan on reading Throne of Glass, I personally recommend doing the author recommendation order as well as the tandem read because I think it's perfect, and here's why. So both of these books take place at the exact same time and you're following different characters in each. So the characters that are in this book are not in this book and vice versa. But like I said, these are happening at the exact same time. This book, when I first started reading it, I thought was going to be my favorite, and I still think it is over Tower of Dawn. But when I started Tower of Dawn, I was like, oh, this is going to be miserable. I'm going to be reading these chapters and wanting to get back to Empire of Storms. But that is absolutely not the case. So in Empire of Storms, you're following the majority of our cast of characters. A lot is happening. You're following a majority of the characters that I personally love. And so it was very action-packed. The chapters, like always with Sarah J. Maas books, as far as I've read from both ACOTAR and the Throne of Glass series, the chapters are so short, which is so perfect. It's multi-POV. It's really, really fun, and I love this. And then in Tower of Dawn, you're only following like 2 different characters, and I really could have cared less about both of them at the beginning of this read. You're following a character that initially in Throne of Glass, the first book, I really liked. I liked this character. I enjoyed their story, but then their story just kind of took a really intense downturn that I hated. And so when you're following them again in this book, I'm like, give me a break. But of course, as always, character arcs are a thing, and I ended up loving them again at the end of this. So like I said, these take place at the exact same time. Now, if you were going in just regular reading order and you were reading this first, it ends on one of the most intense scenes, cliffhangers I have ever read. If I had to go from reading that cliffhanger to starting this, which remember, this takes place at the exact same time as this, I would have been so mad because you don't know anything that's happening because this is basically like starting this over just from different points of view. Of course, these characters are in different places, different things are happening, but I'm so happy. Like, I can't recommend the tandem read enough as much as I've been shilling it, as much as I've been shilling Throne of Glass. If you haven't read Throne of Glass yet, I think it's Sarah J. Maas's superior series. I do. I really do. We'll see how ACOTAR ends, but I personally think it's the superior series. It is just, there's just so much, and it's just so good. And I love every character. Every character is so good. Like, I just love them so much. And I also feel like I've been kind of like, almost like thrilled in a sense, where there's been so many different twists that I did not expect. And it's just so good. And just go into it blind. It's amazing. Like I said at the beginning, I wasn't sure how I would feel about Tower of Dawn. I thought I would hate the chapters that I had to read from here. And at first I did, but then I ended up really liking this. It almost had a little bit of a tinge of a horror element to it, which, to be fair, the Throne of Glass series has been having like little tinges of horror, but this felt really spooky. And I just loved where this one went as well. So I'm so happy to finish these at the same time. And I'm saving Kingdom of Ash, the final book, for November. And I'm so sad about that because I really want to read it right now. I want to know how it ends because so far the story has just been so so good. And I know for a fact I will be rereading this series because it's just been fantastic. I've just been really enjoying it. Now, if you do want to do the tandem read, there are tons of graphics online. I personally found mine off Pinterest, and it just tells you what chapters to read at which times, and it's really super easy. So, and of course I gave these both 5 stars. It just gets better and better. I'll shut up now. Once I finished that, I was really nervous that I was going to go into a reading slump because, like I said, it took me 2 weeks to read those books, and I felt like because it was just so much, like I was consuming so much of that story at once, that I would go into a reading slump. So I was like, okay, let me read a graphic novel. And the only graphic novel that was on my TBR was actually the 3rd and final book in the Sheets trilogy. This is called Lights. I love this. This is like I would say more middle grade. Nah, I don't even know if I would say middle grade. I would say maybe more young adult graphic novel. We are following, the first book, we're following Marjorie. This is, like I said, Lights. In Sheets, we're following Marjorie, where she and her father and her brother run a laundromat. And Wendell is our little ghost, and she meets him and discovers that ghosts in the afterlife is real. And they kind of go on little adventures together. And then throughout the second book, we meet our second character here in Delicates. Her name is Eliza. And then the 3 come together and they have little adventures. And I find these to be really sad because it talks about death a lot. In the first book, we're dealing more so with Marjorie and the death of her mother. Eliza, in the second book, we come to meet her. Her story is so incredibly sad. And in this book, Lights, we find out about Wendell's backstory, how he died, and that was also really sad. These are some of the most beautiful graphic novels. I really like how when we're like in the real world, it's like more pastel and bright. And then when we learn more about like the afterlife, or we're with Wendell and his backstory, it's like reds and darker purples. I love the illustrations of this. I think this is such a beautiful story. I am saving all 3 of these. I think my kids will really like these. I am gonna hold off on giving them to read for a few years just because I feel like it is still a little bit more young adult. Just some of the storylines are a little bit more older, but I did really enjoy this trilogy. I'm happy that I finally finished it off. I guess that's another series of mine that I finished, which is great. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. And then I wanted to kind of dive back into my 25 and 2025. As of right now, I only have 3 books left. I'm so proud of myself. But anyway, I wanted to read a Stephen King this year, as I've been trying to read a Stephen King a year, and I picked The Long Walk for this year because I knew the movie was coming out, and also because it's one of the shortest ones, if I'm gonna be so for real with you. And I'm so sad to say that I gave this 2 stars. I just didn't love it, and I thought I would. I thought this would be a book that I would really, really enjoy. In this book, we're following Ray, and it starts off immediately, like if you remember how I talked about the compound, how it started off immediately in the compound and it ended in the compound like nothing else. This starts off with the walk, ends when the walk's over. So we start with Ray. He's driving up with his mom. He's going to start this long walk. It is a challenge between 100 boys where they walk as far as they can, and once they stop, they die. And it's really brutal, and you kind of see how the human body deteriorates and how people kind of go crazy because obviously they have to stay awake. I think at some point, I think they ended up walking for like a week, it feels like, but I'm not, don't quote me on that. We do get a little bit more backstory about Ray and various other characters in here, but I don't know, I just didn't mesh with it. I just felt like I didn't like it the way I had hoped to. It was just a lot of walking and then it was over. And I just think maybe because I didn't resonate with any of these characters, I didn't care about any of their backstories, and it just felt like the same repetitive thing over and over with just them walking and seeing people and walking and seeing people. I didn't really gel with it, and I'm really sad about that. But yeah, 2 stars. I found it to be super boring. I think if I end up picking a Stephen King to read next year, it's gonna have to be one that I think I'm gonna like I might pick The Shining, or maybe if I'm really feeling like reading a long one, maybe Needful Things. I think Stephen King has a lot of great work. I love personally Salem's Lot. That's my favorite, but this one is one of my least favorites from him. And then I ended the month on a high of 4 star, another 25 and 25 book checked off, and that is The Last One by Will Dean. I was really intrigued by the premise of this, and it's a longer thriller, but I think the premise is incredible on its own, but just barely scratches the surface of this story, and that is absolutely perfect. You need to go into this just knowing the synopsis, and that is it, because it is super, super twisty, super fun. The chapters are so short. It is my favorite type of thriller. Short chapters, every chapter ends on some type of cliffhanger, and the story is just so wildly twisty and turny, and it just, you never know what's gonna happen next. I absolutely adore this. In this book, we're following Kaz. Kaz is older. I think she's almost 50, maybe late 40s, and she's going on a cruise for for the first time with her boyfriend. And in the first chapter, it's literally just her embarking on the cruise, learning how the first day of a cruise goes. You learn the safety situations. They go out to dinner and then they go to bed. And then the next day she wakes up and she is the only person on this cruise ship, crew included. She's the only person on the ship. She's the only person there. What do you mean? And that is the synopsis. That's all I'll tell you, because what I will say is this book just goes in a completely different direction than you anticipate, and I loved it. I loved it so much. Like, I actually found myself really looking forward to reading this. I felt like because of the short chapters and the cliffhangers at the end of the chapters, I was flying through this. I had such a great experience. I did end up knocking it down a star solely because there was a couple things I didn't really like vibe with, and then the ending was like kind of predictable. Well, okay, listen, if you like thrillers, don't listen to me when I say the ending is predictable, because you're not going to predict it off of just what I told you. The ending is predictable based off of like when you get to the end and like the ending is happening, you're like, that's the only way it could end. You know what I mean? I still think you should read this. If you like enjoy thrillers, if you enjoy short chapters, cliffhangers, fast paced, cruise ships, just read it. It's so fun. Like, I want more people to read this because I want to talk to people about it, but I don't want to spoil it at all, because this is a book that you cannot spoil. Like, you have to go in just knowing the bare minimum, because it's amazing. 4 stars. And those are all 5 books that I read in the month of September. I feel like I said at the beginning, because it took me so long to read these 2, I felt like I didn't get much read this month, but I really did fly through towards the end here, which is really exciting. So I had a fairly decent reading month. I'm really looking forward to October and sharing my October reads with you guys as the month goes on. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye, guys.